So this is my 2000 Honda Dio Hyper build. It's the only one like it that I know of anyway. So it is kind of a crazy build. So that's an RT95 cylinder, which is good for about 30 horse, mated to a 44mm stroke crankshaft or a Yamaha Minarelli based motor, and a bunch of custom machining. So I don't have a video recording of most of me building this, but I do have a bunch of pictures, so I can probably take you through a rundown of kind of what it took to get to this point and how to make this motor. It is not what I would say is easy, but it definitely worth it. It's pretty nutty. Do have some issues after taking it out for a ride. One of my projects we're going to have here is putting another rad on it. There's not enough rad at this point in time. Temperature climbs, so I'm going to do a dual rad setup. And we have a Mikuni fuel pump, because I don't think that the stock pump is supplying enough fuel. So that's another bit that's going to go on there. And there's some other stuff too. I'm going to change the plastics out for the cut ones for a different set and try and figure some stuff out there. And then general tuning. And hopefully, if everything goes to plan, someday this summer, I'll be taking this to the dyno. Maybe down at Scooter Swap Shop, just because they're the closest dyno that I know of. But yeah, take it to the dyno, do some runs, and see what it does. So yeah, well, let me just take you through a rundown and a history of what it took to kind of get to this point.
I was upbeat one evening and found a couple pictures on the internet of someone who had put a Stage6 RT70 cylinder on a AF16 or 18. So I decided I had to do it. So I purchased a cylinder kit from Scooter Tuning, RT95, and kind of designed my own base plate to put it on there. Part of the reason why I did that was so I could make the intake bigger. That's the biggest restriction on an AF18 case. So, and that allowed me to put a bigger reed block and etc., so it would actually flow enough. So I 3D printed a bunch up to test, and you can see that I 3D printed an intake and made most of it. And then I had to shoehorn a Minarelli 44mm stroke crank into an AF18 case, so I had to turn it down on my lathe, and then also bore the cases out a little bit. Not as big as a mini stroker, but a bit. And then you can see here me machining out the base plate in aluminum. Yeah, so there's the mostly finished base plate. And still half finished there. Had to do another operation on it there. And this is my test cases, but you can see once you remove the bridge, you have a pretty big inlet into the crankcase. So I also had to bore the bearing pockets back and add a 2mm spacer into the cases to fit the crank, because it's 4mm wider overall. And there's a little bit of some porting going on there, cleaning up the cases. And the kicker gear had to be modified down. It's a Minarelli one, but it had to be shortened. So this was final assembly. That was, the crank was in, the piston was in, kind of bolting everything together. So next up was putting the ignition on. So I used the MVT for a Minarelli. Shows it here in a second. Had to basically take the adapter plate for the Minarelli, make a boss, and weld it onto it, and it fit the crank because it's a Minarelli crank. And that allowed me to use the Minarelli ignition. Then I bought a R&D Italy pipe, which I had to pie cut in 3 spots to get the angle right, so it cleared the frame and all of that. And pretty much at that point, it was done. I was able to put it in the bike, and I think shows a startup clip the first time I started it with the exhaust on it and everything here. And that's pretty much that. That's it built.
So yeah, it seems like the Mikuni pump doesn't have a drain back valve, so it's not going to work on the Dio, unfortunately. I did have another Dio one in the back. I put that one on there. The battery died. I didn't notice right away, but yeah. So I just bolted that one back in its place, and I did get it running. It's not pumping air bubbles, so that's good. For some cardboard aided design. There we have it. Made a nice little air duct. This is the temp number 1 to try and keep the temps down. They weren't crazy high, but they were pretty, it was climbing and getting hotter. This may not be enough rad. May have to switch it out to dual, but this will be my try anyway, see if I can make it work. So I would like to try it out before I end up making this. So we're going to be prototyping with Gorilla Tape. also have one more upgrade for the day. Gene was nice enough to give me this add-a-line caliper that he had sitting around, and I AliExpressed myself a caliper bracket, so might throw this on as well. I just have the stock caliper on there right now, which works okay, but it's a bit sweeter. Often putting these rotors and calipers, especially the bigger ones, on is always a puzzle. You can't necessarily fit the caliper on over the rim, so you gotta figure out a way. So I had to take all the rotor bolts out, and then I gotta bolt the bracket to the caliper, and then slide the caliper into place to get it on and off. Kind of annoying, but that's just the way that it goes. The old one with the 200mm and the stock caliper setup, I could unbolt the rotor and tip it enough that it would come out, but it's a little bit narrower. So. Bleeder's in the wrong place, so I gotta swap that to up there. When it's mounted, the bleeder's on the bottom. It's no good with the bleeder at the top. Otherwise, it'll be really hard to bleed. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Got all the plastic together, it runs, water pump goes. So next up is tuning. I have a leaner atomizer, a selection of jets that I ordered off SIP, and a bunch of needles to try. We're gonna see if we can't hit at least 30 horse out of this thing, which for a Dio based motor, pretty alright. So yeah, tune in next time. Probably do some road tuning, some riding videos, and some commentary probably. So